Hello and welcome to the Beckoning Bookshelf. I'm your host, Jeffrey Ashcraft. I wanted to do an episode on the Twits movie today, which I did watch and I do have thoughts on, but I want to kind of straighten out those thoughts a bit. I want to make sure that when I do the episode, you understand what I'm talking about, where I'm coming from, and all of that. And it's my first movie adaptation episode, so I want to make sure I get it right. So I'm going to make sure it's planned a little bit better and just make sure I do it right. In lieu of that, I decided to do an episode on the Roald Dahl edits that I had mentioned in the Twits episode. And this is fascinating. It's very fascinating looking at these. But let's first talk about my view on editing books. I am totally against it. I am totally against editing a book without the author's explicit permission. Totally against it. I don't really care what the motivation is. I don't care if it's good intentions. I don't care if whoever is making the edits has the rights to the book. Don't care. Unless the author has given explicit permission to make changes to the text of the book, I am totally against making changes to the text of the book. Now, it's not to say that, you can't make other changes, like change the book cover, change the page layout, add illustrations. I believe these were original illustrations, but change illustrations. I'm not saying you can't make other changes, but when it comes to the text of the book, that should not be changed. Why? Two primary reasons. First, it's a very dangerous slippery slope to censorship and, basically 1984 levels of censorship and changing. 1984, written by George Orwell. Winston's job in that story is literally to edit text, to say something that it did not originally say. And that's displayed as bad, which of course it is. And I'm not saying that Puffin Books, who made the edits to Roald Dahl, I'm not saying that they're going the road of 1984. I'm not saying they're trying to censor. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying it's a slippery slope down to that point, because what's the rule set? When are you allowed to edit the text of another person? And what changes are you allowed to make? So it's a very dangerous slippery slope. So that's reason one. Reason two is this is Roald Dahl's legacy. A book is an author's legacy. It's part of their voice. It's part of who they were. And it's a reminder of who they were. And altering that text changes their legacy. So for example, this is a Roald Dahl book. It's Roald Dahl's legacy inside. If someone other than Roald Dahl makes changes to this book now, it's no longer fully Roald Dahl's book. It's now partly someone else's. It's no longer Roald Dahl's legacy in its entirety. It's now partly someone else's legacy. So it can taint or alter an author's legacy, which I don't like. Which I also should point out, the utter hubris required to edit classic books. Wow. Roald Dahl, he primarily wrote to children, but he was a literary artist. His use of language and words is so much fun. It's why his books are so much fun to read. Having the confidence to be able to edit that that's quite a lot of confidence. Also imagine C.S. Lewis or J.R.R. Tolkien and attempting to edit their books. Or Victor Hugo. Thinking I have enough writing expertise and skill to be able to match their writing style. Wow, that's confidence. I gotta say, I am not that confident. But that's my views on editing books. Now let's actually get to the history, the story behind the edits themselves. So in 2023, Puffin Books, the UK publisher for Roald Dahl books, announced that they were going to print edited copies of said Roald Dahl books. They employed sensitivity readers, which is quite the job title, to identify and remove or alter potentially offensive language in the books. So that's basically a summary of what happened. And of course, it was faced with heavy backlash by readers, publishers. The publishers for Roald Dahl books in the United States, France, and the Netherlands all said that they're not going to print the edited copies. So if you're surprised to hear this, if you're like, oh, I recently bought a Roald Dahl book or got one from the library, it wasn't edited, that's why. The United States is refusing to carry them. And also, I'm not sure if it's due to the backlash. I'm not sure if Puffin Books planned to do this in the first place, but they are selling the original text still as classic versions. So, there you go. There's the history behind, the little story behind the edits themselves. Now, before we get to looking at the edits, which I've prepped a few, I want to actually look at the statements from both the publisher and the rights holder, the Roald Dahl Story Company, explaining these edits. Because it's always good to see what their explanation is, specifically. So first, let's look at Puffin Books. They added something now to the copyright page of the edited books. And this is what it states. Quote, "The wonderful words of Roald Dahl can transport you to different worlds and introduce you to the most marvelous characters. This book was written many years ago, so we regularly review the language to ensure that it can continue to be enjoyed by all today." Close quote. So, that's interesting. So, that's what they added to the copyright page, and I can understand regularly reviewing the language, but it's interesting that they say they review the language, but they didn't say that they edited the language. They didn't say that they changed it, which that's fascinating because I'm totally okay with reviewing the language. You know, like when you're printing a new copy of a book, you want to make sure that it's all correct, so you're going to review the language. But editing the language, changing the text, that's something completely different. So it's interesting that they did not point that out. Now let's look at what Roald Dahl Story Company said, because they are the right holders for Roald Dahl books. This is what they said. When publishing new print runs of books written years ago, it's not unusual to review the language used alongside updating other details, including a book's cover and page layout. Our guiding principle throughout has been to maintain the storyline's characters and irreverence and sharp-edged spirit of the original text. Any changes made have been small and carefully considered. Close quote. So again, it's fascinating that they talk about reviewing the book and changing the book's cover and changing the page layout, which again, I agree with. That's totally fine. You're printing a new copy, print a new cover. That's exciting. You're going to change the page layout so it's easier to read. That's cool. Maybe make the text bigger or whatever. Or even add illustrations. You know, that happens. And of course, reviewing it, make sure it's printed properly. Make sure that there's no weird typos make sure there's not a page missing. You know, that'd be weird. But again, they don't talk about actually editing the books. When they say like, oh yeah, we review them, we add different covers and stuff like that, but they don't really talk about editing it. Of course, they do mention that the guiding principle throughout, so this indicates that they are editing, but they don't outright say it. So they maintain the storylines, characters, and irreverence and sharp-tongued spirit of the original text. So that's something I want you to remember. What their guiding principle was. Okay, because as we look at the edits, we're going to see if they met those guidelines, if they kept to their guiding principle. So now let's get to the edits themselves. Now these edits, I don't have the edited copies of the books, so I went to The Telegraph, which actually listed all of the changes themselves. And I greatly appreciate Telegraph doing all this hard work. So I took 3 of the books, and I picked out some of the most interesting changes, some of the most interesting edits. And that's all we're going to cover, because there's a lot of edits, like a lot. So first off, I'll talk about some of the overarching edits, some of the edits that are just everywhere. So for example, any usage of the word fat is now gone. So Aunt Sponge from James and the Giant Peach is no longer fat. She's just large. Stuff like that. Another overarching change across all the books is the removal of many gender-specific terms to add and replacing them with gender-neutral terms, like ladies and gentlemen was changed to folks, moms and dads changed to parents, brothers and sisters changed to siblings, stuff like that. But not in all cases, so it's kind of weird. And also the mere fact that they're changing like those terms, like why does that? Who has a problem with ladies and gentlemen? I mean, it's a basically non-offensive term. It's just saying hi, people. It's actually a well-mannered way to refer to people. So, all right. I'm digressing. Let's actually get to the edits themselves. So first, we're going to start with the twits. Surprisingly, it was the first book on Telegraph's list. And this first edit I'm going to look at in a lot of detail. I won't do that with all the edits. Just this first one, I think, depicts a lot of the problems with these edits. So this is from when the book is describing Mrs. Twit. It's like being how terrible of a person she is. So I'm going to read the original text, and then I'm going to read the edited text. So this is what the original text says. In her right hand, she carried a walking stick. She used to tell people that this was because she had warts growing on the sole of her left foot, and walking was painful. But the real reason she carried a stick was so that she could hit things with it, like dogs, cats, and small children. That's the original text. Here's the edit. See if you can catch a change. In her right hand, she carried a walking stick, not because she needed help walking. But the real reason she carried a stick was so that she could hit things with it, like dogs, cats, and small children. You see the difference? You see the change? So, all right, so they removed the sentence about why she claims she has a walking stick, about the part with warts on her left foot. Why was that removed? Why don't we like that? I was so confused when I saw that change. So I had to think about it for a while, but I think I have a reason. But let's talk more about what the problems are with this edit. So first off, we get some characterization in the original text. We learn that Mrs. Twit has a walking stick, but she lies about why she has it. So we learn that she's a liar. We also learn that she's a sympathy seeker. Why else would she be telling people that it's painful for her to walk? She's seeking sympathy, so she's kind of pretending to be disabled. And that's bad. That's really, really bad. I mean, there's a whole episode of Seinfeld. Well, a storyline in Seinfeld in which George Costanza pretends to be handicapped, pretends to be disabled. And he's basically depicted as a terrible person. Because it is a terrible thing to do. So yeah, it's bad. And it fits Mrs. Twit because she's a terrible person. So with this change now, with this edit, which now just says she didn't need it because she needed help walking, it's no longer depicted that she's a liar or a sympathy seeker. That's now gone. So we lose some characterization. Also, the edit just completely destroys the flow of the paragraph. Because it's so much fun. Roald Dahl's words, and he doesn't have to specify that she claimed she had warts on the sole of her left foot. He doesn't have to get that specific, but that's one of the fun parts about Roald Dahl books. Just how absurdly specific he can get with very weird things. And the new text is just bland, it's boring, it completely breaks the paragraph structure, the paragraph flow. It's And so for example, the original sentence explains her reason that she claims she has a walking stick, but it says the real reason. The new one doesn't talk about her reason at all. So when it talks about the real reason, the real seems out of place. So you can totally tell that this text is not original text, that it was added, it was changed, and it's not near as good, and it really is just kind of bringing the story down. 100%. Now, why do I think they made the change? Well, I think they made the change because it's bad to pretend to be disabled. That's why I think they made the change. Which, yeah, it is bad. But that's Mrs. Twit for you. So, all right. Again, I'm not going to go through each of these edits with that much scrutiny, but I just wanted to show how this one really does kind of depict just all the bad things about these edits. And that's not me being biased. I mean, the edits are just bad. So, let's jump to the next one. This one was weird. This is still from the Twits. This is the original text. Mrs. Twit may have been ugly and she may have been beastly, but she was not stupid. The edited text. Mrs. Twit may have been beastly, but she was not stupid. So, they took out ugly. But they still refer to Mrs. Twit as being ugly elsewhere in the book, so... Like the whole part, my favorite part in the book, about Mrs. Twit having ugly thoughts, that's all still in the book. So, why are we removing this instance of ugly? I don't know. So now we're going to jump to the witches, which I have here. Probably because it's Halloween and I need a different book out. But, here's one of the first changes in the witches. Even if she is working as a cashier in a supermarket or typing letters for a businessman. That's been changed to even if she is working as a top scientist or running a business. Now that's clear feminist vibes. 100% feminist vibes, 100% just making sure we ought to make sure that's a really the high end there. And I don't really have big problems with that. The text just isn't as fun. It really isn't. So, and it also just kind of seems glaringly out of place once again. It just doesn't seem to fit in Roald Dahl's books. Moving on. This was a weird change. The original text. I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most women are lovely. That's been completely removed. I don't know why. And I don't know all the context for all these quotes, by the way, for all these sections of books, of the books. But yeah, so maybe context will help. And maybe this is UK, so maybe there's some stuff, UK culture, that I'm not understanding. But if you know, please tell me. But yeah, I don't know what, that was removed. I don't know why. This is why I was so sad they made this change, because this is a great part. Quote, you can't go round pulling the hair of every lady you meet, even if she is wearing gloves. Just you try it and see what happens. Close quote. That's great. That is it's good advice, and it's a silly idea. Like, do not go around pulling women's hair. It's bad. Try it. See what happens. It's not going to go well for you. That's been now changed to, besides, there are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there is certainly nothing wrong with that. Well, that's just boring. It's not interesting. It's also not good advice. It's just boring. So, they remove some wildly good advice and replace it with something generic and boring. Meh. Okay, here's a weird change. Adorable dress has been changed to lovely dress. I don't know why. This change was funny. It nearly killed Ashton as well. Half the skin came away from his scalp. Ooh, gruesome. That's been changed too. It didn't do Ashton much good. That's quite an understatement there. Okay, handbags has been changed to bags, apparently. We don't like handbags? Is something wrong with handbags? I don't understand. Oh, pretty young lady. That's removed. Apparently, she's not a pretty young lady. Oh, this was weird. So, monster was changed to awful woman, but then later on, evil woman was changed to evil person. So, like I said, a lot of the gender-specific language was changed, and I don't really understand why. All right, now we're on to Matilda. So this is a change early on. So Matilda, of course, reads a lot of novels. She's a big reader, a lot of advanced novels, one could say. Original text: she went on olden day sailing ships with Joseph Conrad. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway, and to India with Rudyard Kipling. New text: she went to 19th century estates with Jane Austen. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and California with John Steinbeck. Now, go back and you remember the guiding principles that the company, Roald Dahl Story Company, said that they had, that they were going to make sure they don't change character storylines and keep the sharp-tongued wit? Well, they're clearly removing a bunch of the sharp-tongued wit. They're clearly removing a lot of that. 100%. That's clear. But here they're changing a character. Because like I said in my intro episode, you can learn a lot about what a person reads. You can learn a lot about a person by what they read. And so Matilda is now reading different books. That changes her character. Now, does it change her character in a significant way? Does it affect the story in any way? No. No, it doesn't. But it does change her character. Her character is now different. That's significant. So they did actually change character. And there's even more examples. Here's a different edit. I'm not sure why. Denizen of the underworld is now resident of the underworld. I don't know why we don't like the word denizen. It sounds so much better. Denizen of the underworld instead of resident of the underworld. This one's funny. Get your father or mother has now been changed to get your family. The family? Like everybody? Like my brothers and sisters? The family dog? Like what? Do I have to bring everybody? So that change doesn't make any sense. Here's another character change. His mother thought it was beautiful. That's been changed to he thought it was beautiful. Again, a character change. The character is now different. That's significant. Again, does it change the story in any way? No, it doesn't. But the character is different now. Now we have another change here. Knock her flat has been changed to give her a right talking to. That's completely different. So, yeah. Then what I said we're just going to cover 3 books. Let's cover 4. Let's go to James and the Giant Peach as well. There's some fascinating edits in there. Here's one. The spider, who happened to be a female spider, opened her mouth. That's now just been changed to the spider opened her mouth. I don't know why. I mean, she's still a female spider. So, No, this one's interesting. They gaped. They screamed. They started to run. Has now been changed to they gaped. They started to run. Well, that's a completely different scenario. I mean, you either look, scream, and run, or you just look and run. So now it's a completely different scenario. So they are changing what's happening in the story now. So, again, is it a significant change? Does it change the plot of the book? No, but it does change the feel of the story. It changes the vibe of the story and the emotions that you're having as you're going through it. That does change. So they are changing the reader's experience with the story, whether they like it or not. Which I believe their guiding principle is to avoid that. Which they are not succeeding in doing so. Okay, here's another character change. This one's significant. Nor I, said Miss Spider. None of us 3 girls can swim a single stroke. That's now been changed to, nor I, said the earthworm. None of us 3 can swim a single stroke. That's a massive character change. Originally, Miss Spider said it and referenced how the females of the group can't swim. Now it's Earthworm saying it, so a completely different character is now saying this dialogue, which that does, again, change the characters. Not the story, but the characters are now different. And Earthworm's a guy. And he's saying none of the three of us can swim. Who's the three? Is it referring to the guys? Is it referring back to the girl? We don't know who he's referring to now. Now, it should be noted that none of the insects can swim in James and the Giant Peach, if I remember correctly. But still, you've changed the characters. And now the story is harder to follow. So, there's that. Oh, this was... So, for those who have read James and the Giant Peach, there's several poems and rhyming schemes in the book, particularly about Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker. Well, those have been changed. Like, all of them. And I tried, and I'm not reading any here. I'm not going to put you through that. This video's already too long. But they're sad. They're terrible. Like, the original rhymes are really fun to read. They're expressive, and they just fit the rhyming scheme really well. They're really fun. The new ones are very bland, and they do not fit the rhyming scheme at all. I tried so many times to make it to rhyme it. Maybe at the end I'll read one and show you the big difference. Yeah, I'll do it. Just give me a minute. So, here's a couple other changes. And then I'll read one of the poems and we'll be done, because this is already a really long video. There were caves everywhere running into the cloud. And at the entrances of the caves, the cloudmen's wives were crouching under little stoves with frying pans in their hands, frying snowballs for their husbands' suppers. That's now been changed to there were houses everywhere running into the cloud. That's it. That's what the change is now. So that really descriptive scene of what you're seeing is now just, oh, there's houses. Yay, moving on with our lives. So, this one was weird. Last change, then I'll go find one of the poems and read that. A few women screamed. Others knelt down on the sidewalks and began praying aloud. Strong men turned to one another and said things like, I guess this is it. Joe, goodbye. Everyone, goodbye. That's just a bit completely removed. That's just gone. So. All these changes are nonsensical. They don't make any sense. Well, I can see some of them, the reasoning behind some of them. That's the cat. He's wondering why I'm sitting here. He wants me to follow him, but I'm busy. Let's find one of these. Aha, here we go. I'll read just one of these. I won't read more than one. So I'll read you the original text and we'll see how well I do. Aunt Sponge was terribly fat and tremendously flabby at that. Her tummy and waist were as soggy as paste. It was worse on the place where she sat. This is what the change is now. Aunt Sponge was a nasty old brute and deserved to be squashed by the fruit. We all felt a big bump when we dropped with a thump. We left Aunt Sponge behind us, but you needn't remind us that we shouldn't feel rotten, for we haven't forgotten how spiteful she could be. It's not near as good. And it even has more words. Like most of the time, they got rid of words because Roald Dahl just overuses words in a magnificent way. It is fantastic. He over-describes things, and it's really fun the way he does that. And most of the time, the edits, they take away some of the fun words. Here, they added words, and it's worse, which is surprising. But that's it. This video is already way too long. So let's close it up. So again, I don't agree with any of the edits. I don't agree with changing an author's original text without the author's permission. I don't agree with it. Because I also think it's a way to... You're erasing history in a way if you're editing the text. Because that's not what the original text said. That's not what the original author said. That's not what the world was like back when the book was printed. And it's important to remember what the world was actually like, instead of attempting to create this fantasy history, what we wished it could have been, or stuff like that, because we're now erasing what history was when we edit classic books. So Whether we like them or not, whether we like the edits or not, the book should stay as they are written. Because again, it's a dangerous slippery slope. Because where does it end? If you find excuses to rewrite Roald Dahl books, are you going to find excuses to rewrite C.S. Lewis? Are you going to find excuses to rewrite J.R.R. Tolkien? Are you going to find excuses to rewrite the Bible, the Holy Bible, the Quran, whatever it may be? You can find excuses to rewrite anything. And then, just like with the problems with AI today, how do you know what's real and what's false? It's a very dangerous, slippery slope. But again, at least it was a fascinating topic for this video. Really long. I'm going to end it here. Tell me what you think about the edits. Tell me if you've actually read any of the edited books and what you think about editing books in the first place. What your opinions are there. I'm going to go see why the cat is just consistently yelling at me. You have a good day. Thank you for being here. Thank you always for being here. You are amazing. Now go find yourself a good book.